Welcome everyone to today's webinar, jointly hosted by GreenTech Metals, ASX code GRE, and Anax Metals, ASX code ANX. The purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of the recently announced formation of a Pilbara Base Metals Alliance between the two parties. During the webinar, GreenTech's Managing Director, Tom Reddicliffe, and Anax's Managing Director, Geoff Laing, will provide an overview of their respective companies, followed by an update on the alliance and what it means for both parties. At the completion of the presentation, Tom and Geoff will be on hand to answer any questions from attendees. So as the presentations are occurring, think about what questions you would like asked and submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I'll put them to Geoff and Tom during the Q&A session. Okay, let's get started. I would now like to formally introduce Anax Metals Managing Director, Geoff Laing, who will run through a short presentation of his company before passing to Tom and then joining back together for the discussion around the alliance. Geoff, over to you.
Thanks very much, David, and good morning, everyone from London. So we're very pleased to give you some background on Anax and our assets, and then talk a bit more about the alliance potential, which we've obviously been talking about for some time now. So I'll just give you a little bit of background to our main asset, Wim Creek, and here you can see a great drone image of some of the infrastructure at Wim Creek. Mining at Wim Creek has taken place over more than 100 years now, but in the last recent history, Straits Resources were the main mining company, and the infrastructure that you see here was all developed by Straits Resources. They built an operation that produced about 70,000 tonnes of high-grade copper cathode from the oxide resources. And you can see there's an oxide heap in the background of this drone image. So we acquired the project back 4 years ago, 2020. And importantly, we obviously acquired all of the infrastructure that you see in front of you. We also acquired substantial sulfide resources. So Straits only mined the oxides, and the sulfides were all left behind. So we have 11 million tonnes of sulfide resources at about 1% copper, just under 2% zinc, 0.5% lead, and some useful gold and silver credits. I want to tell you a bit about the infrastructure and how we plan to utilize this as the platform for the processing hub. So in front of you, you can see the ponds that we have rebuilt over the last couple of years. We had to do that in order to get approvals in place. So now we have a full heap leach circuit and all of the process solution infrastructure. There's also a small solvent extraction plant and electrowinning plant on site. But most importantly, there's all of the other infrastructure, mining infrastructure that's there from the previous operation that we can use for our planned sulfide processing. So we've got offices, we've got workshops, there are of course haul roads, the water systems are there. We've got a powerhouse, there's reticulated gas to the site. So when you bolt all of that together, we've really got all the I guess what we call the non-process supporting infrastructure in place. Some of it needs refurbishment in order to get things kicked off. So how do we plan to best utilize this infrastructure? Well, we aim to have a sulfide processing business fundamentally. So in order to do that, we plan to build a crushing and pre-concentration plant and then a concentrator. From that, we will produce, I guess, what you would call traditional copper, zinc, and lead concentrates. That's fundamentally the business at Wim Creek. But through the pre-concentration, we're able to separate out low-grade ore that's can be stockpiled and processed later in the operation, and we can also separate out low-grade ore that goes onto the heap. We've got all of that heap infrastructure there, and we plan to use our proprietary bioleaching technology that we've been talking about to leach copper and zinc from the low-grade material. We've got a traditional sulfide process stream with a differential float plant, and we've got a full heap leach stream. On top of all of that, we over the last couple of years, we've got the site fully permitted. So this now provides the platform that we are now talking to Tom and his team about the Base Metal Alliance, because now we've got the capability to process sulfides, oxides, transitional ore, and to develop this project very rapidly on the back of all of the infrastructure that we've got in place. If we can just move to the next slide. So we completed a DFS, followed by a study on the heap leaching, on the bioleaching over the last year. And the outcomes of that are demonstration of a very robust project from the Wind Creek ores. So we expect that we could produce about 12,000 tonne a year of copper equivalent in traditional concentrates, and that's over an 8-year mine life. That would deliver about 400 million in free cash at the copper price deck back a year ago. So that was at about $9,000 a tonne copper and about 68 cents exchange rate. And that delivers an IRR of about 55%, and importantly, an all-in sustaining cost of $220 a pound. And the low all-in sustaining cost is on the back of high-grade resources and substantial byproduct credits. Capital costs about $90 million all up, and that's made up of 17 in pre-development capex and 15 in working capital. If you just have a look at these numbers at the copper prices that we're sort of seeing starting to run up now, so at even $10,000 a tonne copper, the free cash jumps up to an excess of 500 million and an IRR of closer to 75%. So highly leveraged to the copper prices, as you'd expect. So we see now the consolidation, the Pilbara Alliance potential adding onto what is already a very robust project. And of course, we're looking forward to, again, working with Tom and the team to essentially do the study work that will demonstrate what this could all look like. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So just a little bit more about the Pilbara Base Metal Alliance and our thinking around that. So here we've got a map of the Pilbara region. We've got all of the base metal assets within the region. The Pilbara is thought, generally better known for its iron ore and more recently gold and lithium endowments, but there are a substantial number of base metal deposits. We've got them all here on the map, and importantly, we've got Wind Creek in the peachy-coloured tenements right in the middle, and then within a 100-kilometre radius on our western side, we've got the GreenTech assets, Wando and Aisha, and what we plan to do is turn Wind Creek into this processing hub that can take ore from other deposits. This is not something new. It's been used in the gold space very successfully over many years. It's also been used in the base metal space. And the Pilbara is ideally suited now for this opportunity, because the VMS deposits in the Pilbara tend to be reasonably high grade and modest in size. And of course, putting it all through a centralized processing facility is the most effective and efficient way of dealing with the material. And so you can see Wando on our western border boundary. The ore from Wando, sorry, not our western boundary, but to the west of us, the ore from Wando would be transported along the Northwest Highway, which is a very substantial highway in the Pilbara. Wind Creek is just a couple of kilometres off that highway, so logistically it would all be relatively straightforward to do. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're planning to do, and we're obviously very pleased to be now working with GreenTech in looking at the rolling out of this Pilbara Base Metal Alliance.
Thanks, Geoff, and thanks for setting the scene, both in terms of what Anax is doing in the region and its thoughts around the Wim Creek processing hub. I'd now like to introduce GreenTech Metals Managing Director Tom Reddicliffe to provide some background on his company, and then I will welcome back Geoff to talk a little bit more about the proposed alliance, and then obviously make both gentlemen available to answer any questions. So, Tom, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Just quickly, some background on GreenTech Metals. We listed in early 2022, and Wandoo was, in fact, it has been our flagship project, and we have a focus on the battery metals in the West Pilbara. When we started off, Wandoo had a resource of some 2.7 million tonnes. We quickly were able to expand that through. Currently, we've got 2.2 million tonnes of just over 1% copper and a bit over 1% zinc combined. So, but not only are we focused on that, we've also in the West Pilbara been chased over the past 12 months, had the opportunity to chase lithium-bearing pegmatites as well, and at the moment, we're now progressing both of those projects at the same time. And certainly the copper is, with the rising copper prices and with discussions with ANX, we now have a strong focus back on Wandoo. Thanks, Geoff. David, on to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. Look, just very quickly as to what Wandoo represents. Some 6 deposits spread over a strike length of some 1.5 kilometres. These are just typical VMS-style deposits, copper, zinc, and a few additional elements in there like gold credits and silver credits. The known resources for our 6.2 million tonnes are associated with the dual deposits at Wandoo, that's east and west, and a slightly smaller deposit over at Asia. And they're about 1,500 metres apart, okay? But in the middle, there are other deposits. And as you can see off that electromagnetic diagram, the geophysical image, all of these deposits are very well expressed by their electromagnetic responses. And interestingly enough, when we look at these responses, the known resources are not the biggest deposits that are there. It's the other 3 underexplored deposits. Their collective footprints are in fact about 3 times that of Wandoo and Asia combined. And for us, that provides a potential opportunity to expand our resources quite significantly, we would think. David, next. So this, one of the additions to these deposits, I mean, is where are they located? And of course, we're very, very close to the coast, about 40 kilometres from Karratha. And as Geoff indicated, only 100 kilometres from the processing plant at Wim Creek. There's another processing plant in the area owned by Artemis Resources, only 10 kilometres away. It's and some of the ore historically has been through that before. Notably by Fox Resources, who owned that plant prior to Artemis, and it's about 10 kilometres away. It's on care and maintenance, and the metal content, when looking at the total copper, it's about 69,000 tonnes that contain copper, and 64,000 tonnes of zinc currently in the resources that we've already established. So I think this alliance is a great opportunity for us to monetize our Wandoo, particularly our open pittable resources, which is largely the resources we've defined to date, even though we'll be looking for shortly to test some of these the underexplored targets that are there. Looking at both shallow and deeper resources, particularly at Austin Shelby and the Yannery prospects.
Thanks, Tom. Now, I will ask you to stay on because Geoff will be coming back now to provide a bit of an update on the alliance itself and a bit of an overview of what it's all about, and then we will jump into Q&A. So, Tom, if it's okay, I will keep you on for the 5 minutes during Geoff's presentation, and then we'll jump straight to Q&A. So if anyone does have any questions, now's the time to start thinking about those. But Geoff, over to you.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Tom. So a little bit about what the Alliance could deliver for us both. The most obvious outcome of the Alliance would be an entity that would control a significantly increased resource base and the metal endowment that goes with them. So, that would see the potential to produce more copper, zinc, and precious metals from the same processing infrastructure, and so getting the benefits of greater metal production through that infrastructure. Importantly, both Wim Creek and Wando are Wando is completely open pit. The Wim Creek assets are open pit for the first 3 to 4 years of mining. So when you couple them together, you could potentially have this longer period of open pit production, and that's very attractive. When you have a look at copper production from high grade assets, open pittable in the Pilbara, that ticks many boxes, and certainly I think in terms of financiers and investors, having the simplicity of the open pits is a great outcome. So once you couple it all together, I guess there's probably 3 key areas where we're seeing where we could see significant benefits. The operational efficiencies and benefits. You end up potentially with a single mining team or mining contractor, and I guess the economies of having just a single contractor doing all the work. The process plant ones are fairly obvious. You're only having to build one plant to process all of this material. You'll have a single processing team managing that whole business. So you get these economies of scale. And from an ANX perspective, we are looking to potentially bolt on others where we would see further growth in that. And then we also see the potential for more favorable funding and offtake as the scale the project grows, products produced increases, the opportunity to secure better funding terms and better offtake terms is significantly improved. And then from an environmental perspective, regionally, it's a great outcome. You have overall a reduced environmental footprint. You only have one processing plant. In the case of Wim Creek, and something I didn't mention earlier, and I should have, we plan to put the tailings into old pits. So no need for a tailings dam, but it all goes into old pits. And that's a benefit. The pit's large enough to take material from Wando and other projects potentially. So again, you're not having to permit and build multiple tailings dams. There's just one outcome for that. So overall, multiple benefits to all parties involved. The Alliance would deliver near-term copper production for all involved, and a potential exposure to a much greater, larger asset down the track as well. Thanks, David.
I think we have one slide to go, so we'll just, is that something you wanted to talk to, Geoff?
No, we've just included the resources, so I think we both talked high level to the resources, so no need to go further on that.
No problems at all. Look, a number of questions have come through. As I said, if you do have any questions, use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and I'll put those questions to Geoff and Tom as they come through. Geoff, first question for you. If the planned Wim Creek processing hub ends up treating ore from Wim Creek, Wando, and potentially Sulphur Springs, what sort of copper equivalent production rates would be reasonable to expect?
Well, we plan to expand the processing capacity to somewhere around 20,000 plus ton a year throughput. And I'll just go into a little bit of detail on that. It's a good question because, as I explained earlier on, we will have the capacity to process the sulfides through the concentrator, but also oxides and transitional and low-grade sulfides on the heap. So the aim will be collectively or combined to have at least up to 20,000 ton a year of copper equivalent processing capacity. The actual production rates will depend a little bit on the timing and sequencing of material going through those processing facilities. And I just want to make the point that those processing facilities are all being designed so that they are modular and they can be expanded to accommodate additional production. So it could be that ultimately we've got closer to 30,000 ton a year of production capacity at Wim Creek.
Well, that actually leads into the next question that's come in, which talks to, does the expansion in production related to third-party ore sources require an increase in CapEx for Wim Creek versus what was considered in the DFS delivered last year?
I think the most likely scenario would be that it would be a staged expansion process, and that we would effectively execute on what we have talked about in the DFS. So we would end up with a concentrator up front processing the Wim Creek ores, and then potentially soon thereafter a sort of a fairly minor expansion to both the pre-concentration plant and the concentrator to start accommodating sulfide ores from Wando, and any oxide and transitional ores from Wando would immediately go onto the heap. And the solvent extraction, electrowinning, and crystallization circuits would then be established and built up after that. So I guess in a roundabout way, no, we expect that we would get going with what's in the DFS, and then in years 2, 3, and 4, there would be some expansion to the infrastructure to accommodate the ore coming in. And the benefit of that is that some of that could be paid for out of project cash flows.
Yep. Tom, one for you. In terms of next steps for the Alliance, what are the next steps to determine the viability of processing Wando ore at Wim Creek? Have you started talking through that type of detail?
Yeah, look, we've had some discussions, but now we'll be getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, I guess you might say. The initial focus, of course, will be very much at the project level. We'll be looking at, how many oxide copper tons do we have? How many sulfide tons do we have? What is the suitability of either of these ores to go through the Wim Creek proposed processing plants? Now, we are not expecting any particular issue with these things, but some of the ore from Wando has previously been through Wim Creek, the leach side of it. So we're not, but these real numbers need to be got from the ore. So we'll be looking closely at that, and and even things like, is there any opportunity or benefit in beneficiating the ore before it's carted 100 kilometres? There might be something to be gained there. Does the mining and processing economics change overall for either company? Being part of a larger project, how does that affect the thing, which would then fold back then into the how much ore you can afford to take, cutbacks and things like that. So we'll be looking at all of those things and much more to decide, is it going to be a viable operation? Okay, obviously we wouldn't have gone to this stage without at least having a high-level understanding that we think it'll work. And so now let's get the real numbers and see if we can make it happen. Because, as Geoff pointed out before, their operation is only a few kilometres off the bitumen road, and equally ours, I think, is only about 3 k's off the bitumen road as well. So, there's a lot of pluses for this whole thing. And it's not as if we've got to build a highway to get and maintain it, a dirt road between the two operations. There's one already provided. So, all of those things are good. And, we'll both get together with our people and Geoff's people to start working on these questions. And obviously, they've got all the more advanced in their studies in the processing side than we are at our end.
I've got two very project-specific questions, one for Tom and one for Geoff. So, Tom, yours first. In terms of drilling at Austin and Yannery, when do you think drilling will get underway?
Look, we've had this on our books for a little while, and we're now just finalising our drill plan, actually. And it'll be a couple of thousand metres, mainly RC. And we would anticipate this program should be finished this quarter. Okay, so before the middle of the year, and we'll be focused on both shallow open pittable ore, mainly to do with the deposit, the Yannery deposit, which is at surface, part of it, and we previously drilled there, and there's relatively high grades, and so it's easy pickings from our respect. And but we're also looking at some of those big targets that we referred to and we've been chasing slowly over time, which is Austin, which has the biggest EM footprint of all, and we suspect there might be some larger body down there, but obviously deeper, potentially an underground resource, as including the target next door, which is Shelby. So we're looking at both of those, but very much focus on that near surface stuff as well, because we see the immediate prospect to be able to open that stuff up.
And Geoff, question for you. This relates to mineralogy. Now, the resource appears to shear downwards and is open at depth. Have you started looking much? How advanced are you really in looking at mine design? Is it open pittable type design, or is it or some other alternative?
So we we have 4 deposits, and there's been a large amount of work done on all 4 of them, and 2 of them are open pit, 2 of them will be underground. So the open pit deposits have all of the design work completed, and the undergrounds equally have all of the design work completed. The 2 deposits, and I'm talking specifically about Evelyn and Salt Creek, are both open at depth. So we, like Tom's team, will be doing some or a lot of exploration or resource growth work there, and we plan to do some drilling at Evelyn and possibly at Salt Creek. But that's all just extension type work. Back to the question itself, in terms of the actual mine designs, they're all advanced. Certainly at a level where we understand the mining techniques, and obviously the open pit ones, very advanced work has been completed.
Another one for you, Geoff. You may have glossed over, but certainly your shareholders haven't. Your JV partner at Wim Creek is Develop, who holds a significant stake. When do they begin to contribute into the JV, and do they have a wider view or a view on your plans in relation to the alliance and then the wider consolidation and support that you're looking to do?
Yes, so great question. And if I just take a step back in the process that I described, so when we acquired Wim Creek off VentureX, we acquired an 80% interest in the project, and VentureX were to be free carried through to a decision to mine. VentureX then obviously became Develop, and that relationship has continued on with an 80-20 joint venture. So they will start contributing once a decision to mine is made, and we're really pleased to have been able to tell the market that we have in fact started working with Develop on the potential to bring oxide and then possibly transitional ore from Sulphur Springs to Wind Creek, because the Sulphur Springs deposit does have some oxides at the top. It's never been mined before, and transitional material that may perform better in a heap leach process than potentially putting it through a concentrator. And so that work has already commenced. And so the relationship is good. We're working quite closely at a technical level, looking at this potential. And I think that the opportunity to bring forward cash flows by processing that oxide material would be attractive. The whole Base Metal Alliance, puts up some interesting opportunities there. So, overall, we work closely with the Develop team, and certainly see that relationship growing as we roll out these studies on Sulphur Springs. So, just to close off that question, we see the alliance starting off with GreenTech, and then potentially with the Sulphur Springs material being rolled in soon thereafter, all subject to the study work. Tom obviously alluded to doing study work. It's obviously all subject to study work demonstrating that it can viably be done.
And a couple of questions here, so I'll group them together. In terms of the restart, if you like, what is a realistic timeline to have the operations up and running and restarted, and looking at the different ore options? What in your mind, what's a realistic timeline to restart at Wind Creek?
Well, with the infrastructure that's there, we believe that once a positive financial investment decision has been reached, that an 18 to 24 month period is reasonable for building the concentrator and pre-concentration plant and ramping up the operation to full production. As everyone would have seen in that drone image, the infrastructure is there ready to go. A lot of it's just to be refurbished. So that is quite achievable. And since the pits are already open, we can get in quite rapidly. So that's what we'd be targeting. Obviously, as the alliance comes together, there might be some more moving parts in there. The timeframes might change a bit, but as I said a bit earlier, the plan is still to execute on what was talked about in the DFS, and then seamlessly wrap in the other ore supplies. But that is all subject to the test work and what that tells us.
Tom, a question for you. You did allude during your presentation to the fact that some 10 or 15 k's away was another processing plant on care and maintenance at Radio Hill. Why did Wind Creek stand out, and why was it so compelling to look at for GreenTech from an alliance point of view, and as a genuine processing option?
Well, I suppose the difference between those two options, I guess, really, and what stands out is that the ANX opportunity is already happening. Okay, it's being developed. They have plants, the leach plants there ready to go, and they've processed ore in it all, and they've previously processed some of our ore. Now we'll be looking at obviously the viability of treating our ore over there, and once that looks fine, if we get a go ahead on that between us, and we'd be looking at how the two companies would interact in that respect. Okay, now the Radio Hill plant is an opportunity as well, but it's owned by another party. It's on care and maintenance. It would need some refurbishment as well. Okay, and that therein might lie the difference in that that would give Anax perhaps the edge at, perhaps depending on numbers. Certainly, Radio Hill's a lot closer, and it's the main difference is in this respect, I guess, that there's no requirement for us at this particular point in time to be part of the where the development costs for processing at what as Geoff has outlined. Okay, so but certainly Radio Hill is certainly one of the an option on the table, and internally both we would still look at that option as well. Just by the closeness of it, and maybe it could be involved. I mean, these will come out of the studies that the Alliance will look at. I mentioned before their beneficiation and so forth. Maybe that's an opportunity of reducing the amount of material needed to be taken across to Anax. But we'll be looking at that as well, I imagine so.
So clearly the team who's been there and done it before and already in place, and the robustness of the project, one significant advantage there for Wim Creep and Anax. Geoff, just in closing, from a funding point of view, what's the funding look like, and when do you think the required funding will start falling into place, particularly in a market where we're now seeing significant rising copper prices against the DFS published only a year ago?
Yeah, well, the rising copper prices have obviously really focused the interest in this, and it certainly helped lubricate that funding process. Excuse me a second. So we continue to work on the funding, and the funding is obviously such a key element of any project that you want to make sure that you get it right and get the best outcome. And so we've sort of come through what was a very tough funding environment through last year to an environment where I think the funding conditions are improving and continue to improve, and will continue to improve going forward. So, I think we're engaged with a number of parties. I'm in London at the minute. I'm about to jump on a plane to go to Switzerland. That is to talk to some key parties, particularly on the trading side of things. And we do expect to see that part of the funding package would be delivered from traders on the back of offtake. So, yep, we're working hard on that. And then in terms of a principal lender, there are a few options out there. In terms of timing, obviously can't give exact timing on it. We're working hard on it, and I think safe to say that the environment has improved significantly over the last couple of months, and should continue to do so as the copper price increases. And I'd like to say again, with the alliance, with the growth at through a processing hub, the benefits that can deliver on funding are not insignificant. And of course, that's for us an important part of the process going forward.
Well, I will need to close it off here, only because we have extinguished all our time available for questions, and I have been reliably informed that there is a taxi waiting downstairs to take Geoff to the airport to get him on that flight to Switzerland to talk to the money men. So I'd hate to be standing between a managing director and a potential investor. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in today to listen to the presentation and getting a first-hand understanding of the Alliance and why it is of such immense opportunity and value to these two companies. And much work to be done, but clearly focused on moving towards a positive outcome. I'd like to thank Geoff and Tom for your presentations and participating in the Q&A. Contact details for the two companies are on the screen, and if you would like to follow up with them directly, please do so. On that note, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And Geoff, enjoy your flight.
So, thanks, Tom. Thanks, David.